She didn't find a text. She didn't find a receipt. She found a flight confirmation. And not just one. Multiple flights. Multiple women. All paid for by the man who put a ring on her finger and told her she was the one. Let that sink in for a second. We are not talking about rumors here. We are not talking about someone accusing somebody based on a feeling or jealousy or insecurity. We are talking about documented proof. Paper trails. Names. Dates. Destinations. And what Ashlee Jenae did next after she found all of this is what has the entire internet divided right now. Because some people think she handled it exactly right. And some people think she made the biggest mistake of her life. Stay with me, because this story goes so much deeper than just a cheating scandal. There are layers here that the headlines are not telling you. And by the time we get to the end of this video, you're going to have questions that nobody has been able to answer yet. For those who have been following Ashlee's story, you already know that this relationship had been under scrutiny for a while. There were whispers. There were comments under her posts. There were people in her own circle who had tried to warn her. But Ashlee was in love. And when you are in love with someone who is charming enough and careful enough, you dismiss the warnings. You tell yourself that people are just hating, that they cannot stand to see you happy, that the man in front of you would never do what they are implying. But here's the thing about liars who are also good at covering their tracks. They do not stop just because they got away with it once. They get more confident. They get more comfortable. And eventually that confidence becomes carelessness. And the carelessness becomes the very thing that exposes them. That is exactly what happened here. From what has come out publicly, Ashlee discovered the flights almost by accident. The way these things usually happen. It was not some dramatic movie moment where she hired a private investigator or set up a hidden camera. It was a quiet, ordinary moment that cracked everything open. And once she saw it, she could not unsee it. The flights were not going to one location. They were not going to a family member or a business associate. These were flights booked for women. Local women. Women from the same area. Women who, in at least some cases, people in their community apparently knew or recognized. And the dates on those bookings lined up with times that Ashlee had been told her fiancé was elsewhere. Handling business. Handling family matters. The kinds of excuses that sound completely reasonable until you have a flight confirmation sitting in front of your face telling you a completely different story. This is where things get serious. Because booking a flight for someone is not a casual mistake. That is not an accident. That is not something that just happens. That requires intention. That requires planning. That requires sitting down, entering someone else's name, someone else's travel information, and hitting confirm. Multiple times. For multiple people. What does that tell you about the kind of deception we're dealing with here? Now, when Ashlee went public with what she found, the internet did not exactly respond with silence. Within hours, her story was everywhere. People were tagging her from every platform. Screenshots were being shared, and the commentary was all over the map. Some people immediately jumped to her defense. They called what her fiancé did predatory. They pointed out that this was not a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern, a deliberate and sustained pattern of behavior that required constant lying, constant manipulation, and a complete disregard for the woman he had proposed to. But then there was another group of voices. And this is the part that I think is really worth paying attention to. Because some people online started shifting the focus away from what he did and started questioning Ashlee. Why did she post this publicly? What was she hoping to gain? Was she looking for sympathy? Was she looking for validation? Was this some kind of performance? And I want to stop right there. Because that reaction, right there, is something we need to talk about. When a woman finds out she has been deceived on this level and she chooses to speak about it, the immediate response from a significant portion of the public is to question her motives. Not his. Hers. She is the one who got lied to. She is the one who was kept in the dark. She is the one who had her future stolen from her by someone who was living a double life. And yet the conversation somehow circles back to what she did wrong. We're going to come back to that. Because I think it matters more than most people are giving it credit for. Now let us talk about the women involved. Because here is a layer of the story that has gotten very little attention. The women who were flown out. The local girls, as they have been described. What did they know? What were they told? Were they aware that this man was engaged? Were they aware that there was someone at home who thought she was planning a future with him? Or were they deceived just as thoroughly as Ashlee was? This is a question that genuinely matters. And it is a question that nobody seems to be asking loudly enough. Because if those women were lied to as well, then we have a situation where one man was running multiple simultaneous deceptions on multiple people at the same time. That is not just infidelity. That is a calculated and coordinated campaign of manipulation. That takes a specific kind of person to pull off. A person who is very comfortable compartmentalizing. A person who does not feel the weight of the harm they are causing because they have convinced themselves that as long as no one finds out, no one is really getting hurt. Stay with me, because what gets uncovered next raises even more questions. There are people who knew. That is the part of the story that I keep coming back to. Because in situations like this, the person doing the deceiving is almost never operating in a total vacuum. There are usually people around them who have seen things, who have noticed things, who have received a text that was not meant for them, or overheard a conversation that did not quite add up, or been asked to cover for someone in a way that made them uncomfortable. And those people stayed quiet. Now, I am not here to assign blame to everyone in the orbit of this situation. People have complicated reasons for not speaking up. Loyalty, fear, not wanting to get involved, not being sure enough of what they notice say something out loud. These are real human dynamics, and pretending they are simple would be dishonest. But it is still worth sitting with the reality that when Ashlee was planning her future with this man, there may have been people around her who had pieces of the truth and chose not to share them. What does that do to a person when they find out? Not just that they were betrayed by their partner, but that the betrayal was somehow an open secret that they alone were kept from knowing? That is a specific kind of hurt, and it does not go away easily. Let us talk about the timeline, because the timeline here is actually one of the most troubling parts of this whole thing. Look at when the flights were booked. Look at where they lined up in relation to key moments in Ashlee and her fiancé's relationship. Because from what people have pieced together publicly, some of these bookings happened during periods that should have been significant. Periods when a person who was genuinely committed to building a future with someone would be fully present, fully focused, not coordinating travel arrangements for other women. And yet, there is something deeply disorienting about discovering that the timeline of your relationship and the timeline of someone else's deception are running parallel. That while you were celebrating something real, they were maintaining something hidden. That the moments you remember as meaningful may have been sandwiched between moments that prove exactly how little you were being valued. That is not just heartbreak. That is a rewriting of your entire history with a person. Every memory becomes a question. Every trip, every conversation, every moment you thought you understood becomes something you now have to re-examine through a completely different lens. Do you want to know what I think is the most haunting part of all of this? Keep watching. When Ashlee first went public, her fiancé did not immediately respond. And in situations like this, the silence from the accused party is almost always telling. There are really only a few reasons why someone would not immediately and forcefully deny an accusation of this magnitude if it were false. One is that they are caught completely off guard and genuinely do not know how to respond. Another is that they are consulting with people around them about how to manage the fallout. And the third is that they cannot deny it because denying it would be pointless when the evidence is already out there. The fact that the response did not come quickly, the fact that when words eventually came they were careful and measured rather than raw and immediate, that tells you something. Innocent people, and I mean genuinely wrongly accused people, do not typically respond with quiet calculation. They respond with urgency, with desperation, with the kind of visible distress that comes from having your integrity publicly attacked without cause. What we saw here did not look like that, and people noticed. Now I want to talk about something that a lot of the coverage around this story has glossed over, and that is the question of what Ashlee was supposed to do. Because there is this impossible standard that gets applied to women in situations like this. If you are too quiet about being betrayed, people assume you are complicit, or that you knew and looked the other way. If you speak up, you get accused of being dramatic or looking for attention. If you leave immediately, people say you gave up too fast. If you take time to process, people say you are weak or that you are going to go back to him. There is no version of this where the person who was wronged gets to just be human, gets to just be in pain, gets to figure it out at their own pace without being judged for every single decision they make in the aftermath. And Ashlee has been living inside that impossible standard in real time with hundreds of thousands of people watching and commentating and projecting their own feelings and experiences onto her situation. I want you to really think about what that feels like for a second. You have just had your entire vision of your future shattered. You are dealing with betrayal on multiple levels simultaneously. And on top of that, you are expected to perform your healing and your decision making in a way that satisfies an internet full of strangers who have never been in your shoes. That is an enormous weight, and very few people are giving her credit for still standing. But here is where things take yet another turn. Because as more information started to surface, some of the women who had allegedly been flown out began making their own statements. Not all of them, but some. And what they said opened up a whole new set of questions. Because the picture that began to emerge was not simply a story of a man secretly cheating on his fiancée with women who were innocent bystanders. The situation was messier than that. There were connections. There were histories. There were suggestions that this was not just a man acting alone, but a situation with its own complicated web of relationships and knowledge and choices. I am not going to jump to conclusions here, because the full picture is still not clear. And anyone who tells you they know exactly what happened and exactly who knew what is either lying or guessing. But what I will say is that when you start pulling on a thread like this, and the thread just keeps unraveling, it usually means the deception was bigger and more organized than it first appeared. This changes everything about how we understand what Ashlee walked into. And it raises questions about just how long this had been going on before she ever found that flight confirmation. Let us talk about the community response. Because it has been something. People who know Ashlee personally. People who claim to have connections to the situation. People who say they have been watching this unfold from the inside. All of them have been vocal. And their accounts are not always consistent. Some people say Ashlee was warned multiple times by multiple people, and that she was not willing to hear it because she was so invested in the relationship and in the future she had planned. Others say that the warnings were vague at best. That nobody actually came to her with concrete evidence. That what people knew was enough to make them suspicious, but not enough to say with certainty that something was wrong. That distinction matters, because there is a big difference between someone ignoring clear evidence that their partner is cheating and someone being unable to act on murmurs and vibes and secondhand suspicions. People are not always given the gift of certainty before they have to make a decision. And judging Ashlee for not leaving sooner assumes she had access to information she may not have had. But let me ask you this. If you were in her position, if the person you loved had done an excellent job of managing their image and managing their secrets, if the people around you were uncomfortable but not loud enough, would you have known? Would any of us have known? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. There is another element to this story that deserves attention. And it is the element of public persona versus private reality. Because based on what Ashlee has shared publicly over time, this was a relationship that looked good from the outside. It had the markers of what people recognize as a real, committed partnership. There were milestones. There were plans. There was a ring. There were the kinds of shared moments that you put on the internet because you are proud of what you have built with someone. And the question that comes up in situations like this is always the same. Was any of it real? And I think that question deserves a nuanced answer. Because the feelings on one side of a relationship can be completely genuine, even when the behavior on the other side is completely destructive. Ashlee's love for this man was real. Her investment in this relationship was real. Her belief in the future they were building was real. None of that disappears just because the person she gave that love to was not who she believed them to be. What he was doing does not erase who she is. It does not erase what she brought to that relationship. It only reveals the gap between how she loved and how she was loved in return. And that gap is enormous. Now I need to address something that has been circulating that I think is important to handle carefully. There are people suggesting that this is not just about infidelity, that there are other dimensions to what was happening, that the pattern of behavior goes beyond simply having romantic connections outside of the relationship and into something that speaks to a deeper character issue. I want to be careful here because I do not have all the facts and I am not going to speculate beyond what has been established. But I will say this. When a pattern of deception is this consistent and this layered, it does not usually exist in isolation. The same capacity for calculated dishonesty that allows someone to secretly fly out multiple women while engaged tends to show up in other areas of their life as well. People are not split personalities. The version of you that deceives one person is the same version of you that makes decisions in every other area of your life. And the people who truly know someone well enough, the ones who have seen them in unguarded moments, those are the people whose silence or whose carefully worded non-denials are sometimes the loudest statements of all. Pay attention to who is not speaking up in defense of this man. That list might be just as telling as the evidence itself. Let us take a step back for a moment and talk about where Ashlee is in all of this right now. Because the human reality of what she is living through should not get lost in the drama of the story. She went from planning a wedding to dismantling a relationship. She went from trusting someone completely to questioning everything she thought she knew. She is doing that while being watched, while being discussed, while having strangers on the internet who have spent 5 minutes looking at her situation feel completely comfortable telling her exactly what she should be doing and how she should be feeling. That kind of public processing is not something most people will ever experience. And it comes with pressures that are genuinely hard to understand unless you have been there. What I can say is that based on what she has shown publicly, Ashlee is not falling apart. She is standing in it. She is processing. She is speaking her truth, even when the truth is painful and messy and does not come wrapped in a clean narrative. And that takes a kind of strength that a lot of people underestimate when they see it. If you are watching this, and you have ever been in a situation where you discovered that someone you trusted completely was living a different life behind your back, you know what the ground feels like when it shifts under you like that. Leave something in the comments for Ashlee if you want. Because sometimes just knowing other people have survived something similar is what helps you keep moving forward. Now here is the part of the story that is still unresolved. And there is a lot that is still unresolved. We do not know the full extent of what was happening. We do not know exactly how many people were involved. We do not know what conversations have taken place privately between Ashlee and her former fiancé since the story became public. We do not know what the women who were flown out are planning to say or not say. We do not know whether there are legal dimensions to any of this that have not yet surfaced. And we do not know what Ashlee's next chapter looks like. What we do know is that this story is not over. Not even close. And the updates that are still coming are going to continue to reshape what we think we understand about what happened. This is a situation where the surface-level story, the cheating fiancé, the flight confirmations, the public exposure, is actually the beginning of a much longer and more complicated unraveling. And as more comes out, as more people decide to speak, as the people at the center of this continue to navigate their next moves, the story is going to keep evolving. I want to end with something that I think gets lost in these kinds of stories. We talk about betrayal. We talk about the evidence. We talk about who knew what and when. We talk about the internet's reaction and the community's response and the timeline and the receipts. And all of that matters. But underneath all of it is a woman who loved someone, who believed in someone, who gave herself fully to a vision of her future that turned out to have been built on lies. And that woman deserves more than to become a trending story. She deserves to have her experience taken seriously, to have the conversation around what happened to her go beyond the drama and into something more honest about what it actually costs a person to be deceived at that level by someone they chose to trust completely. The flights were the proof, but the real story is what it means to believe in someone and discover that the person you believed in was never entirely real. That is the story we should all be sitting with. If this video made you think, if it gave you something to sit with, if it raised questions you want to talk through, I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your theories about where this case goes from here. And if you know someone who has been in a situation like this, share this video with them. Because sometimes the most powerful thing is just knowing someone else has told the story honestly and out loud. Like this video if you want more in-depth coverage on cases like this one. Subscribe if you are not already here, because there are updates coming on this situation, and I will not let you miss them. And share this with at least one person who needs to hear the story. I will be here watching, and I will be back the moment something new breaks. Stay strong, Ashlee, and stay tuned everyone, because this is far from over.